Christmas is coming, the goose is getting fat. Please put a fate point in the GM's hat. This is Red Dice Diaries with a Christmas Eve review talking about how to run that all-important first session of a campaign. Okay, so you're starting up a new campaign and you're getting ready for a first session. Now, the first session is really important for a number of different reasons. One, it sets the mood and tone for the rest of your campaign. For instance, if you're going to be running a moody modern horror game, then don't start with humorous, jape-filled sessions, for instance, or vice versa. Your first session should fill the players with enthusiasm and have them wanting more. If you want people to keep coming back to the game, and presumably you do, otherwise why run a campaign in the first place, then you need to have a starting session showing off the best of your game. This may be the first exposure that some of your players have to the rule set that you are using, or the first time that you have GM'd for them, so you want to start introducing the rules gradually and getting them used to your GMing style. Now, a bit of a warning here, don't give your players a huge wodge of rules to digest straight away. In my opinion, nothing kills enthusiasm faster than having to digest hundreds of pages of rules before they can jump into the action. Okay, maybe one other thing. Try to keep character generation entertaining and as hassle-free as you can. It can be supremely disheartening to get all geared up and fired up ready for a game and have a character in mind only to then have to spend hours and hours crunching numbers. For example, if you look at the video of the character creation for our upcoming Jadepunk game, The Skyless City, which you can do by clicking on the thumbnail, you will see that although the video is about 3 hours long, only a relatively small amount of time is taken up by the character generation. It is interspersed with general chatter, socialising and talking about the setting for the game. Breaking up your character generation with a bit of chat or a discussion of the setting or some other aspects of the game can be a good thing, because it not only gives the players a bit of a breather, but it allows anyone who has fallen behind a little bit of a chance to catch up without making them feel bad for being a little slower at generating their character. Since at the end of the day, everyone writes, thinks and comes up with concepts at different speeds. As I said, we're currently getting ready for our Jadepunk campaign, which will be starting on the 28th of December 2014, and I'm preparing for the first session now, so I'll be referencing it a lot during this video. However, there's not going to be any super secret information present here, so my players can watch this video without worrying. Jadepunk itself is a steampunk-esque setting, blending elements of mysticism, the Wild West and high-action kung fu, using a build of the Fate core system. It's an excellent book, and you can see my video review of it by clicking on the book that I'm holding. And I'll put a link to DriveThruRPG, where you can buy it from, in the description below. I highly recommend it. Okay, so when it comes to preparing the session, there are numerous different ways you can do it, especially that all-important first session. Now, I'm going to take you through the process that I use, but please keep in mind that no one approach will suit everybody, and that my own approach to preparing games is constantly evolving as I read and absorb more information and ideas. This is just how I do it at the moment. So, going through it step by step, we have step 1, get to know your setting. In order to have a great first session experience and to provide that experience to your players, then first of all you need to know the setting yourself, whether it's a commercial setting or one that you have invented. In my case, Jadepunk takes place in the corrupt metropolis of Khao City. The authors have deliberately left the vast majority of the city quite vague so that GMs can make it their own. So I've had a quick look through the book's chapter on the city for my preparation. Note down a couple of key points concerning the atmosphere to create and the type of game that you want to run. Now, handily in Jadepunk, the Fate aspect mechanic is used. For those who aren't familiar with it, aspects are story tags that can be used to gain fate points and bonuses, but that also help describe setting elements. And it gives the following aspects for the city. Everything is for sale, only the shrewd thrive, and jade-infused society. Straight away, this tells me a lot about the game setting. It's a corrupt metropolis built on a jade-based economy, where anything can be purchased for a price, but that only those cunning and clever can make their fortunes, whereas everyone else will fall into the corrupt, jade-dust-polluted slums. I've noted these down in pencil on an index card so I can have them handy when running the session, as a little memory aid just to glance at occasionally to keep the core values of the setting in mind. Now, during character creation for my own game, we also talked a little bit about the sort of setting that the players want to see, and it was decided we would go for a multi-level hive city style structure, with the richer people being nearer to the open air and the poorer people confined to the skyless lower levels. Now, I've talked about this before, but getting players involved in the creation of a setting is a great way to get them invested, to find out what they want to see in the setting, and also to take some of the prep work off your shoulders as a GM. If what you and your players come up with ever contradicts or goes against what is in the published version of the setting, then by default I would say always go with your own version. No one from the publishing company is going to turn up and demand you run their version of the setting, whereas you want to do everything you can to encourage and support creative input from your group. There are few things more rewarding in an RPG than a setting element that you have created or inspired turning up in some cool way. Now, I've split the city up into 4 levels: a floating sky palace level where only the richest and most powerful live, an upper class level, a manufacturing level, and the slum or ground level. These were all created in concert with the players, suggesting that they want to see the social differences of the city made manifest in a physical way, and perhaps move between those different levels, experiencing contrasting environments and situations. Now, in order to get the players involved even more, I've assigned each of my 3 players a level, taking the Sky Palace level for myself, and have asked them to come up with 3 aspects to describe them. These are also noted down on the same index card as the aspects for the city. So, for example, the Sky Palace level has the following aspects: 1. A floating haven from the cares of the lower city, accessible only to the richest and most powerful. 2. No pleasure is too debauched or sin too great if you have the money. And 3. Hidden cabals formed from the richest members of the level have turned to forbidden pleasures to sate their jaded tastes. And another example would be the slum level, aspect 1 being an overpopulated slum where poverty-stricken people strive to get out. Aspect 2 is a horrendous jade-infused smog that spreads a plague. And 3 is safe havens from jade smog are home to cutthroat criminal organisations. Now, for our next point, you should then pick a couple of elements of your setting that you want to emphasise in the first session and note them down. Look at the notes that you've just made and pull out a few details that you feel represent the most interesting parts of the setting. For my Jadepunk game, I pulled out the following: the importance of jade. After all, the game is called Jadepunk, and magical jade is a major part of the setting. Next, I've pulled out the commerce and power of money / corruption. This is also a big part of the setting, since in Jadepunk the players play members of the Jiang Hu, a rebel society trying to bring down an oppressive and corrupt regime. And it also moves us nicely onto our next point: the social divide and those who cross them. This can really show the city has multiple levels and differences between them. And finally, I've picked on the element of airships, mainly because they're cool, and a few of the players seem quite interested by the Jadepunk tech during character generation. Plus, vehicles like this are great for big dramatic set pieces. So for our third point, look at the rules of your game and decide what rules you really want to get cemented in your player's mind for the first session. Note them down. Now, Jadepunk is a high-action, quick-paced system, so I've gone for the following. I want to get across the idea of invoking and compelling aspects, of making skill rolls, and how to work combat and taking damage. Make sure that you understand the rules that you've picked, and, if necessary, have a cheat sheet with them handy or note them down on post-its so you have them available quickly and to smoothly answer any rules-related questions during the session with a minimal of fuss and delay. For point 4, create an enemy or an obstacle to be overcome for the first session. It's always a good idea to have a clear goal for a first session of a campaign. You want the players to hit the ground running and dive straight into enjoying the game. You don't want them to be unsure of what they have to do, or the game risks stalling, so give them an enemy or obstacle to overcome. Look back through the notes you've already made and pull something from there, or look at your player characters' backgrounds. Now, in our game, I like the idea of the rich cabals in the sky palaces and also the criminal organisation. So I think that I'm going to have the main source of opposition be from a criminal organisation in the lower levels that has ties to the upper levels. This will also provide incentive for the PCs to explore different levels of the city and gain the full Khao Sao City experience. If you can in some way give your opposition a link to your overall campaign goals, if you know what they are, or at least leave it open so you can fit it in later, if you don't know what the overall campaign storyline is going to look like, then that's also worth doing so you can lead smoothly on from the first session into the rest of the game. Now, I've not yet come up with the overall campaign goal for our Jadepunk game, since I want it to involve a bit more organically and be linked in more with character goals. However, the criminal organisation and the connected cabal can easily be extended to be involved in a number of different potential plot lines without having to stretch the consistency of the setting too far. Point 5. Don't try and do too much in the first session. Now, this is one of the problems that I often see in the first session of a campaign, is when the GM has a head full of ideas, which, don't get me wrong, is always a good thing, but then they try and cram them all into the first session. This normally results in a lot of last minute cutting, which can make the session feel disjointed, or trying to cram too much into it, and inevitably something will get missed or it won't get dealt with in enough depth, and the game can feel a little shallow or disjointed as a result. Look at how much time you have available for the session, and then work out how many encounters you can reasonably have. Note these encounters down on a separate index card or piece of paper. You can then change the order by moving these about, or make amendments by writing on them during the sessions. I would suggest one major scene per hour of game time as a baseline. If the scenes are particularly short, then you may want more, or if they're particularly long, especially if you play a more tactical or combat-based system, where combats can take a long time to resolve, then you may want less. Obviously, this is only a rough guideline, and you'll get to know the numbers that suit yourself and your players better as you GM more. Don't forget there will also be additional moments of character dialogue, rules, queries, and other such things that all take up time. If in doubt, designate some of your encounters as optional and only write down the very basics that you need to run them. Then you can jettison them if you find yourself running short of time. They can always be reused later. Since my Jadepunk session is going to be approximately 3 hours long, I'm going to create 3 encounters. One will be fairly major and large in scope, the other 2 slightly smaller. Point 6 would be to start off in the middle of the action, or in media res as it's also known. Now, having gen their characters, the players will no doubt be chomping at the bit to get started. It can seem a bit of an anticlimax to then have to play through some slow-paced party meet-up scene until the real action gets going. Tell the players at the start that their characters know each other and are a party, but leave it up to them how they have met. This can be decided at character gen or later via a flashback, but it doesn't need to be dealt with at the start of the first session. You want to get the momentum and energy going right from the beginning. Throw the PCs straight into an action-packed, interesting scene. This not only allows them to start getting a handle on the mechanics of the game, but also gets their enthusiasm fired straight away. In Jadepunk, I intend to start the game with a scene set on an Aram White Jade airship plummeting towards the city with fire blazing from the back of it, looking like it's going to crash. Crowds are panicking and running everywhere, and the city guard are out in force. I intend to start the players on the airship, but will ask them where on the ship they are and leave what they are doing there to them. The drama of this being on a burning and about to crash airship will make this one of my major scenes. It will also give the game a nice quick pace and create an air of tension. Point 7 will be to keep the game moving at pace. No matter how well prepared you are, inevitably a question will be asked that you don't know the answer to, or someone will ask a query about a rule that has slipped your mind. Don't look in the book or allow the game to grind to a halt whilst you look it up, although if you've got a cheat sheet you can glance at it. Make a sensible ruling and tell the player that you will check on the 100% official ruling after the session. Occasionally a player will protest, in which case you may need to be a little firm with them and tell them that you don't wish to hold the game up unless absolutely necessary, but most will be glad to keep the game and the pace moving. Give some thought before you start running your game to what you will do if the players get stuck or the game starts stalling. This can be a point when having optional encounters is very valuable, because they can be brought out to get the plot moving again. And for our final point, point 8, when the game is finished, ask the players for feedback so you can see how it went. Feedback is very useful, but not everyone is comfortable giving it in person. So I normally send out a feedback form a couple of days after the session. This also puts players less on the spot and gives them time to think about it. Thank everyone for their feedback, both bad and good, and try not to be offended by anything that's written. Read it in a neutral frame of mind, or as neutral as you can be. Take pride in the things that you've done well in the session, and make notes of anything that you may need to do a little bit better. After all, feedback from your players is one of the most valuable tools you have for improving as a GM. So there we go, that's 8 points from me on how to run that all-important first session of a campaign. I hope if you've enjoyed this video and found it useful, you'll click on like and subscribe by clicking on the red dice up in the corner. As always, you can leave your comments in the box below or hit me up in the Google Plus links. I really do enjoy reading everything that you write. Thank you very much for watching and for listening. Until we see you next time, take care, and since this is being filmed on Christmas Eve, Merry Christmas to you all out there and a Happy New Year.